BJ from Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Dennis Chan, the designer of Beyond the Sun, Bradley and I's favorite game from 2020, published by Rio Grande Games. I don't think Steve's played it yet. No, I've played it a couple of times. Dennis, you've probably played it more than a couple of times. Give us the elevator pitch. What is Beyond the Sun? And you can ignore that terrible score from the LSU Auburn game. It's still sitting up there.
So Beyond the Sun is it's a space civilization game set in like 200 years from now, where we
23rd century.
Yeah, 23rd century, where we just devastated Earth because we are very irresponsible. So to not have the species go extinct, we decided to work together to share our technology, and that's why this is the whole thing about the game, which is a shared technology tree. It is not a co-op game, but all the information is open and all the actions you can see, and everyone can research them. Once you share the technology, bam, we created space travel, and now we can go to any planet. We can go colonize. We can go research ridiculous technologies, and of course, humans start to fight again, and that's the beginning of the game. And in this game, the tech tree is variable. You're building a kind of a shared tableau on the board, and every game is different because these texts are color-coded, and they have different kind of leaning towards what type of game it will become on that day. And every time you play, it's going to be different, and then there's different achievements, which will also drive the game in different ways, and whatever events come up, which is something that happens when you research a technology, also drives the game in different ways.
I read your designer diaries, and you had some interesting inspirations for this game. What was the jump off for Beyond the Sun?
The main inspiration was Civ 5, because I was obsessed with civilization on the computer back when I was just about like a year or two in designing games. Nothing really came out yet, no great ideas, but I really liked Civ 5. And then I realized that no board games has a real tech tree. Okay, you have Eclipse has that little tech market, so it's a market. You have a game called Progress, which has a tree, but it's not really working that well. You have Innovation, which jumps everywhere. It's not really a tree. And
TI4? TI3?
TI3 has a tree, but it's like, it has too many things going on, and the game,
and it takes 8 hours.
It takes 8 hours. I actually have never finished the game.
Okay.
So can I distill that into something that I really want a tree, basically? That's my, I just wanted it. But I don't want it to be so long. So I made a game with ancient civilization first, because Civ 5 was ancient civilization, starting from pottery or farming or whatever. It didn't work because of the variable tech tree. How many things can you go from ironworking? It has to make sense. But once I switched to sci-fi, it's just so much easier. Yep.
Yeah, because that entry level is space travel. Once you hit space travel, it opens up everything else, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because in this game, Steve, at some point, everyone invents what they call FTL, faster than light speed. So all of a sudden, you're beyond the solar system. It's the entire universe is available to you, right, Dennis?
Yep, yep. So that's the basic technology, the level 0. So that's the beginning of the game. And then from there, you branch off into the 4 flavors of level 1 that I talked about: the military, the resource, the science, and the colonization. And then you start branching off, and all you need to research is to have a shared color from something that is the lower of a lower level. And that's why it's variable.
The success of this part of the game, Steve, to me, is the fact that this looks on the table. By the way, that is a 7 or 8 foot conference table at my office. and we needed that space because with COVID, we try to limit the amount of people that are going to play. We only played 2 or 3, as I told you, Dennis. Haven't been able to play 4 yet, unfortunately. Someday we will. But this is a big, giant conference table. And that board takes up almost the entire table, as you could see there. But the beauty of it is the mechanics on this part. I mean, gotta admit it, Steve, it looks a little intimidating, right? It's not at all.
Yes.
It's very intuitive, and the iconography is very clear. How did you guys pull that off, Dennis? Because you take a game that is complex in the way that everything moves and everything comes together, yet all the mechanics are relatively simple and pretty intuitive.
Yeah, so let me bring you to the next inspiration, which is my favorite board game, Agricola.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about it first before I get back to your question. So I'm sure you played it.
Yes.
You start with basic actions. Take 3 wood, take an occupation, whatever. And then every round you get 1 more, and then everyone can go on it. It's a little more complex. Maybe it doesn't get any more complex, but you get more and more actions. And
it builds the complexity one round at a time.
It introduces you to the simple stuff, and then you get more and more options. Right. And that's what connected me to, maybe the tech tree can be actions. Now, back to your question, because those actions are so small, like you do one thing, that's how my design started. Most of the time, it's just like build something or collect something, that for the basic text. And then for the more advanced, you just build a little bigger or do 2 things at the same time. And some technologies, and this did not follow Agricola, has no action on it. You just get something when you research it, and that's it. So it doesn't overwhelm players. If every technology has an action, you'll end up with, 30 actions to choose from? That's too many.
Right. That's too many.
So a lot of the hidden complexity is just, you only do one thing at a time, or when you research something, it does not expand your selection choice space, so to speak, and so it clears your mind. You can plan out a couple of turns ahead without having to think about, oh no, I have to do this, and then I have to remember to do this. I don't like games where like you do one thing and it just like you have to remember to do this, you have to remember to do that. So this is clean. You just do one thing and that's it.
He's right about that. It's doing one thing. So we joke around a lot about Vital Lacerda games on the show. I like Lisboa, and Vinhos was not quite as good. The Vital Lacerda games have the opposite. He claims it's just, you're just playing a card, pick a card, playing a card. But the reality is, you're staring at a board, and the board is basically built out from the very start. All of the complex systems are there. Where do I start? I've got this Rube Goldberg machine, and I don't even know where the start button is, And sometimes I press the button to start the machine, and I don't have enough quarters to finish because I forgot that this is going to trigger that, is going to trigger this, and oh my God, I don't have enough gold. Your game doesn't do that. It introduces the simpler mechanics and just adds on the complexity as players get experience.
Yes.
What I wanted to talk about is the ingenious way that you and I guess Ken kind of helped out here on this, if I understand the developer part, is the player boards and the way they interact with the rest of the game.
Yeah, so this is a almost completely different system that I added on after the tech tree, my desire for tech tree was fulfilled. It's like, okay, so what do I do with the workers? I'm trying to remember when this game was still Ancient Civilization, it was just cubes, and it was just you get these territories like plains, mountain. Remember in Civilization you get hammers, and the cubes are hammers basically. I was like, oh, that's kind of boring. And then I looked at through the ages, and then I looked at the population. I'm like, oh, the first 4 population cost 3 food, the next 4 cost 4 food, 5 food, 6 food. Can I do something here? But through the ages is also really long, so I'm trying to do something that's simpler. So here, all you need to do is you unlock. It's an unlock mechanic. Mm-hmm. You get the first 4 population from the first row because it's unlocked. There's no disk blocking it. and you have to grow your food before the next 2. So there's no cost. You don't pay 3 food for 1 population, because that's a lot of math. You just grab anything that is open, that is not blocked by the food disk. But of course, eventually, because humans get really smart, you can build robots which bypasses the food. So you just take cubes from the leftmost cube you can find. And I've seen players they have taken like 3 food from the board and they clear out the whole cube because they just kept building robots that don't require food. So that's one thing that I got from Through the Ages. It just evolved over testing, and it just got to this state, which I'm happy about. Another thing is it's completely mirrored with the money, the ore side, which is the same. It's a pretty standard track where you unblock, you take out these gears, and you get more money. So I like the duality of it. So I only need to explain one thing. I don't have to explain 2 different systems.
You got all these dice, Steve, and they look like different dice, but they're multi-use dice, basically. You're flipping them between rockets or people or I guess it's ore. Is that what the other?
No. There's 4 rockets, 4 spaceships, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a human, and then a box.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is unborn people.
But instead of having a bunch of different types of resources for this, it's all 1 die, and the die just flips around. So you pull him off as a person, and he launches into space as a rocket. When he expends, he comes back onto the board as a box. So it's neat the way that these dice can be used in multiple ways as some of the components in the game. I thought that was pretty ingenious, Dennis.
Multi-use cards, I've heard. Multi-use dice is, at least from these faces, the way you're describing it, sounds very new.
Yeah, that's another thing that I stumbled upon. That's like kind of the 3rd breakthrough, which is I used to have, as I said, just cubes. But then I either place on a map, which is you're working on the farm, again, with the ancient civilization, or you're doing the technology because you're a scientist, or you're going on space. And I used to have ships. I'm like, why have so many pieces if the ships are, well, it used to have like a range of 1 to 10 power. And it turns out if you have, people can just run away if you have too high. So I limited to 4, and then I counted 1, 2, 3, 4 person supply 6. Okay, done.
Perfect for a 6-sided die.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Dan Throw was on the show a month or so back, Steve. Dan was on the show, the Space Biff. He did an excellent review, by the way. I know you've read it, Dennis, because I think you've talked about it. Yeah. But Dan was on the show, and surprisingly, he and I disagreed about something. His favorite part is the tech tree. I love the tech tree because I grew up in my computer games. I grew up playing Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, all those things where it's all focused on tech trees. I mean, you're just trying to figure out what tech tree you want to use and how you're going to maximize the particular way that you're going to do it. And I love that part of your game, but I love the SpaceX mechanic in here because instead of being this big giant TI board, or like a lot of games where even Scythe, it's this board that you have to go all the way across. You've shrunk the entire universe down into this. It's still a big board, by the way, Steve. It's the size of a normal board game, but you've shrunk the entirety of space exploration into this small board. Yet every game is different. Dennis, how did you do that?
So, well, going back to my main goal, tech tree, I'm like, okay, so I have this big thing at the table. If I have a huge hex map, no one is going to have a table for that. And also, I want, maybe we talked about that before with Lacerda games. There's just too many things out there. So I want people to focus on one thing. It's like kind of back to music. You have that main movement, and then you have the side movement. So you can't just have 2 really loud movements, and then like you just, like people get distracted. You have a soft part, you have the main part. So this is the side part, and to be honest, it came next because, as I said, my main goal was the tech tree, but the tech tree needs to work on something for it to be the game. So this actually used to be just a military number, like Through the Ages, but like, it was just a number, and that's it. But then I was like, I need a little more because people like maps, but I don't really want a whole map. So what is the smallest I can do to shrink a map? So a graph basically, in mathematical term, is the easiest way to abstractify a map. And naturally, you have Seoul, which is where we come from, and then you have these distant stars that you're going to, and the first mechanic that came to mind is area control. So you have these spaceship powers, and then you just do the largest army, just like Settlers of Catan. That's how I explain to other people. If you have the largest army, you get it. So that distills a lot and not distract people from the main thing.
But it gives players different avenues of victory. You know, you could focus on the tech tree. You could focus on the SpaceX. You might want to focus a little bit on both of them, maybe. I've found, at least in watching me and Bradley and Jay Bell play, that it gets a lot harder if you're just doing one. Yeah. You built in some barriers to doing that, isn't that right, Dennis?
Yes, this is where I really focus the testing. So if you notice that if you research, there's no blocking. Anyone can research anything, but the research is expensive. Just like real life, you need to spend people, and the people don't come back. They work their life in science. Yep. So you lose people. You end up not having enough food, and researchers don't give you that much food. Sometimes they remove a disk, but not as fast as colonization, which removes 2 at a time if you colonize the planet. So I totally agree with you. I don't like games where you just need to do one thing and you're done. You can ignore things. I tried very hard to limit the technology side so that if you just do that, you're going to run out of steam. You have to go to the other way. Another way I do that is some technologies give you ships. So you'll be like, you'll be too stupid if you don't use them because they're there. Like
free ships.
Sometimes you just, it's ready for you. Just do it. So it's kind of a nudge mechanic. So now on the space side, if you just want to focus on space, then you're going to be flying around with these tiny one ships. Other people are going to beat you eventually.
At some point, they're going to catch up. They're going to be getting free ships from the technology card, Steve, and they're going to just come right back into space. And the whole time you've been working on this, and then at some point you're going to top out.
Yeah.
But there's a cool little twist to this. And this is where I wasn't expecting how important this was. And the second game we played, Bradley just smoked me because of this. And that's those 4 random, well, I'll say 4. The 2 random cards in addition to the 2 in-game scoring cards. There's 2 that always come out, if I remember right. It's either 1 or 2. And then there's 2 that are different every game. Is that right?
Yep. 2 and 2 random.
What's this mechanic, and what was the inspiration for that?
It's funny that I can name every mechanic where they came from. This came from Civilization: A New Dawn, the board game, where they have 3 achievements, and I think if someone achieves 2 or 3, the game ends. Oh, and also Scythe, which is 6 the stars, kind of a combination of both. So I like directions. So back to music, you need to have an overarching theme. So what are you going for? You can't just say play the game and just do your best. So the achievements are like the North Star when you start a game. Okay, so you need to get to level 4 always. You need to get colonized always, because that's the goal of the game. And then you have these 2 little ones that you can kind of achieve mid game to late game, which kind of determines the direction of the whole game. Another interesting thing that happened in some of the playtests is even if someone is really lucky and get to level 4 early, like way earlier than I expected, they're sitting there because you need 4 stars in 4 players or 3 stars in 3 players to end the game. They finish the tech tree and have nothing to do, and other people just kept playing. So it is another limiting mechanic that kind of sometimes help with you have to do a little bit of everything to win.
So, Dennis, I've heard tech tree, I've heard area control with a little bit of combat. Who's got the most, 4 versus 2 versus 1. I've heard exploration. Is this a 4X game? Is this a 3X game? Where do you see it?
I would say 3.5.
3.5?
Can I choose an answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Split.
So remind me of the exploitation. exploration, which we have, and expansion,
and the one we always forget,
extermination.
Yeah. How do we forget that?
That's the one I'm missing. I just personally do not like games where I lose things. So this, you do not lose any ships unless you elect to, which is colonization. And even then, I made sure I wrote in the rulebook, they're not dead. You don't kill your ships. They don't fight. They landed and they guard the planet that you colonize on. But I had to give it a half point because you do lose the disc if you lose control of the planet. It's a very soft combat that me as a Euro player, I can stomach it because you can get it back. You just need a little more ships. You just need the largest army again to get it back.
I think that's what attracted me. Both Bradley and I love Euro games, but he likes conflict and other type games way more than I do. You know, TI type of games. And this is the kind of game that we can play with our friends that aren't into Euros, because it's going to satisfy our Euro itch, but it's also going to be plenty of thematic gaming. You know, I mean, there's even though you're not rolling dice, there's a little bit of American trashiness in there where you're trying to take over planets and you're watching what other people doing. This is not passive aggressive type stuff. This is, some of it's kind of in your face, Dennis.
Yeah, it is. It is. You can pick someone and just say, I don't like you. I'm gonna take something right before you colonize. Yeah, you can do that. Yes, as a Euro player, this is actually out of my comfort zone, but I think it's a good thing. It pushes people who just do okay, I'm going to optimize every turn. I don't care about what other people are doing except for the worker placement place. Just pushes a little bit, but not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah.
It's a good hybrid between the Euro and the Amerithrashness of some of these other games. So yeah, good on you on that. I do like the fact that you're getting us out of our comfort zone with our thematic.
Including myself.
It's definitely so Steve, in essence, he designed a game to push himself out of his comfort zone. That's not bad, right?
No.
And I don't win this game very often.
Well, join the club because I haven't won yet. So, that little orange disc that you saw with the 4 points on the thing, that's not my disc. What's next for Beyond the Sun? Anything cooking?
So we're developing a solo mode. We're developing an expansion. So details will come out later. We're still working on it. We have
we're always fishing for scoop.
We have a new module, most likely.
Okay.
Wow. We'll add to the factions. We have some new factions, and
I mean, we can call this a success. You completely sold out everywhere, right?
Yeah, and we also have a second printing coming, which is just the base game.
When should that be coming out for those fans?
I don't know. You have to ask Ken.
Yeah,
he will know the dates.
We should have asked him in the green room. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have asked me about, hey, we want to play. We see you talking about this game all the time because I'm always posting about it on social media. Can we play on computer?
I think Rio Grande is putting together a digital version. So we just have to clean it up and get it playable and stuff.
Yeah. And again, and Ken didn't say this was private, but Ken did say in the green room that, to mention that they're working on it.
Yeah.
And without mentioning any specific services, we should see some announcements about a digital version. So until you can get your hands on a physical copy like we have, there may be a way to get around that and play, especially in these COVID times, because I want to play with 4 players and I just can't. So I want to try this out. Steve, you heard a lot of talk tonight.
I did. Yeah, I'm quiet and listening for a long period of time here. This sounds interesting because one of the ideas that you get with these big sprawling epics is what I would think of as being, dizzy from all the choices. This sounds like it offers choices within a structure that is guiding you through that choice space. Now, you have options, but there is a universe that you're working in, and the universe directs you. I like the way you said that before, Dennis.
Yeah.
That's the difference between me wanting to play this game and me wondering, ooh, is it for me? That's the answer that makes it a yes.
I do also want to emphasize that even if all the choices are out, the entire tech tree is out, it doesn't mean you get to choose all of them because you have to research them. Any technology that you see, if you don't own it, you don't get to take that action. So it further limits your choice, but it creates a strategy. Like you have to plan, okay, which way do I want to go so that I can get that action? But when you get it, if someone else also has it, then it becomes a little bit of a fight because it's a worker placement spot.
Yeah, this is back, and again, taking it back to music for me, this is back to Baroque. There is structure. There is rhythmic structure to this, and you can play within that. You can be very creative with it. But in some of those things where the things need to click in the right order, I need that to be there on the table to present it to me rather than romantic all over the place. I love it, but I probably couldn't compose it.
I love I like that you keep going back to Baroque. This is like okay, I don't know whether you know enough, but this is like a fugue.
Yes.
Where at the beginning you only have one technology. So that's the theme. That's the theme of and then you flourish into this theme, and then a variation of this theme, and then you add more, and you add more voices.
But you don't ever lose the first theme. The first theme re-echoes throughout the fugue.
And people go back to that worker placement spot. It doesn't mean that they always pick level 3. They sometimes have to go and pick that first theme still.
No, you're right. We did have to go back to level 1, but at the same time, Dennis, each player had kind of their own song that was going on, right? Yes. So Steve, you might be a little bit more military intermixed with whatever color you liked. I might totally ignore the military track. It reminds me of those computer games we used to play where when you're playing head to head on people, if you do exactly what other people are doing, you're just going to get nullified. Right. You have to zig while they're zagging. You have to be better than them in the categories they're not strong in, so you can overcome them, and then hope that your defenses are good enough. Same thing with this. Even though it's not direct combat, as in Dennis is over here, I'm going to get a bunch of armies and go over there and attack them. It's not that. It's the fact that Dennis gets to design his experience the way he wants to play. Now, Dennis, the way you made it is that they're going to come out randomly, so it's not like you put a square peg into a round hole every single time. You have to look at what the board cards came out. What technology came out in this game? What end goals have come out in this game? And how can I figure out from what's on the board, how do I get to that next level, right, Dennis? Yeah. Is that kind of what your goal was?
I do want to clarify that the person who researched it has a choice of 2. So
yes. Yeah.
They do get to, I like to call it, they get to influence the fate of the human history. So humankind.
That was the other disagreement that we got into with Dan a little bit, is that he liked the random way that they came out, because he said it's sort of like, the discovery of penicillin was kind of accidental from looking at something else. Bradley and I kind of liked it better when we had more agency over what was coming out.
Yeah.
What do you prefer? Do you like the random chance of science, or do you like the studied application of knowledge and stepping on the shoulders of giants?
I like the draw to pick one. That's my personal.
Take that, Dan.
Because have you tried the expert mode where everything is open?
Well, we played the 2 different ways. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay. The basic mode is draw to pick one.
Yes.
The random mode that you talked about, actually.
Yeah.
It's draw to pick one.
We actually did it backwards. We did the one where you look at 2 of them and you make the choices.
Yeah, that's the basic game. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the expanded game is you have 12 cards on the table that you can see.
We also played that mode too. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Bradley can correct me, but we played 2 different modes because we wanted to see how they played.
Yeah. So I like the random draw to pick one.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, yeah. So that's why.
Yeah, never mind. No, so he likes Dan's version better.
Yeah, because it's more thematic. I know sometimes it creates runaway leaders because they just drew always draw the right one. But I feel like, okay, I play again if somehow someone got really lucky, because this is close to the thematic. Okay, all right. This comes up. Oh, I got these 2. They're not really in my plan. What do I do? Okay, I'll choose this best one. Maybe I'll alter my plan. I want to pivot. It's life. Something happens to you, you have to change.
What if you're on the wrong tech tree and Bradley pulls this amazing one, and I haven't researched any of those colors at all? Man, it's pretty tough. Hypothetically speaking, not talking about any one particular person.
And but the expert version, where you get to choose, like you get to look at up to 12 cards before you choose, that's more typical of Euro games, where you get to plan and you can take away the card and put it on your side of the tree and not their side. Right. Then it gets more strategic, but it's not very thematic. Like, unless you go back to Dune, you eat the spice and you can see the future, why would you know all 12 technology that's coming out?
Because you're a Benny Gesserit?
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Gesserit.
Benny Gesserit. Because you're a Benny Gesserit. That's why.
It's less thematic, because like you don't get to see every technology that human can research. So.
No, and I like that also when you say it that way, there are also then different forks in the game. Those forks in the game are not totally of your choosing, but again, it's a choice that you make within a constrained space.
Yeah,
that's an unfolding of the game rather than you can choose the entire future out in front of you.
Yeah,
I like that.
As you know, I'm picking on Dan. I think the world of Dan Thoreau. I think he's the best critic that we have out there. The way he writes is just amazing. It makes me mad because he's such a good writer. So if anybody hasn't checked it out, check out Space Biff's review of Beyond the Sun. Because I think he really hits on the feelings of why this game is so important to the board game industry. So Dennis, kudos to you, because I love it when people do hybrid games, and this is a great example of a hybrid game. So Bradley says he prefers the expert mode because there's an incentive to go after other technology tracks for cards that support your style of play. That kind of goes back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
It lets you play the way you want to play the game, right?
Yes.
Whereas the discovery, the beautifulness of discovery is important, as Dan Thoreau, correctly points out.
Yeah.
So, two different ways of playing the game.
As I said, I like the kind of the creating the story. So I go with the discovery theme. But again, you can choose. You talk to the group and you play this time, and you play the other way the other time. Another thing I want to point out is basic factions and advanced factions. One is more sandboxy because everyone starts the same way. The other one, you have goals to achieve, but some people don't want to be locked into their goals. So again, choose.
Bone to pick with you on that one. We did play it the second time. Bradley, correct me if I'm wrong. We did play that, and I really focused hard on trying to get my special powers. And I wasn't sure at the end of the game. I'm like, I'm not so sure that that's what Dennis wanted me to do. That focusing on trying to get to those last spots is not the goal of the game. I should still be, this is a tech tree SpaceX game, not a develop your player board as best as you can and then come back and run that engine. Like, I was wasting a lot of resources just focusing on upgrading my board. Was I correct at the end of the game that that's not what you want to focus?
Yes, that's not what you should do. But you should try to win, but with a small emphasis on getting your powers.
Right. Not your only strategy.
You can't be the only strategy is to unlock that thing. Then what do? You don't have any points.
But can I consider that a win, though, if I unlock that last box?
I can see that.
It's like playing Dominion, Steve. Playing Dominion and using up your entire deck. You should win. That should be an automatic win. I played every card in my deck, and I found out that's not the way to win.
I can see that you get distracted by shiny things.
I do. I totally do.
Honestly, BJ, you wouldn't know that he's a first-time guest on the show. He just kind of distilled the nature of Gumbo down there.
Dennis, you get me, man. You get me. Totally. I get totally distracted by shiny bubbles. I'm like the crab in Moana. Totally. Dennis, this has been a blast talking about Beyond the Sun. Hey, people, as you could see, I'm super excited about the game. You can read about it on our blog when we talk about our dozen games from 2020. It was tough 2020 this year because we didn't get to play quite as many games as we normally do, but we felt like we played a pretty big cross section. And this is one that, as I've told Steve and I've told others, I can recommend to a lot of different gamers. This is going to be people that like Euro games, you're going to like this one. People that like thematic games, you're going to like this one. People that like 20-minute party games, okay, maybe not. Maybe not this one. But everybody else, I think you're going to like this game. This is going to be good. It's Beyond the Sun from Rio Grande Games. Should be coming back into print, hopefully pretty soon, and maybe some digital implementations down the line. Is that right?